All right, Mark.
Thank you, Wayne. Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Cicero Planning Board meeting. Would you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Mr. Rosita, would you lead us off? Thank you. First item is the approval of the minutes from the October 20th meeting. Everybody got a copy of the minutes? Any questions or comments? Mr. Snyder?
I looked again, I couldn't find any mistakes, so they have to be approved as printed.
2 weeks in a row. That's awesome. Do
She's good, that's why.
we have a motion for approval?
Moved.
Second? Mr. Rosito?
Yes.
Mr. Abbey? Yes. Mr. Snyder?
Yes,
Mr. Bloss?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next, we'll open up the meeting to public comment. If there's anybody that would like to speak to the board on any active application, please come forward now. If nobody is approached, we will close the public input. And the first item on the agenda, Fred Kennelly has requested to be pulled off of the agenda for this week, so we have done that. We'll move on to Montroy Development for property Route 31, a zone change from general commercial to PUD.
Good evening, Tim Coyer. I'm using Roman's Land Surveying. I just have smaller copies of the map that's up top for everybody.
Thank you.
that worked good.
So we're back officially. Basically, since the time we were here last time, we've actually submitted a formal application to the town as far as a PUD zone change for this property. I know we were here informally previously for this site. Not much has changed as far as the overall concept and design for the site since the last time you've seen it. We have added a couple things, specifically the road detail sections, a couple extra notes. We have added the public turnaround here, back here. So this portion of the entrance would be all public and the rest of the roads in here would be private. A lot of the tonight, what we wanted to get kind of hashed out before we send our engineer on full engineer drawings is to make sure that the board was good with the overall sketch and the overall plan for the development so that we can move forward with engineering contract drawings and satisfy a lot of those problems that we're going to run into. We are going to come in with a full subdivision application for the residential portion over here immediately. So we'll be submitting a preliminary plan application along with the final plan application to go with all that. But again, we want to make sure that there's no changes that the board's looking for before we turn loose our engineer, and wanted to make sure there was nothing else that the board had comments on.
Thank you. We'll open up the questions. Mr. Rosito?
All set. Thank you.
Mr. Abbey? At this point. Mr. Snyder?
I guess I'm just concerned, we talked with Peter that this may not be the actual layout of residential area because you may switch from a single residency to whatever.
So
I'm concerned that, yeah, that's something you're gonna come back if you want to change it, but I'm more in favor of having this be what you're gonna do, and like we do with almost every other development.
So kind of like every other development where we do like an overall preliminary plan, we'll come in and get that approved. And sometimes with those preliminary plans, when we come in for individual sections, sometimes the lots change when you come in for that individual section to get filed and approved. That's going to be a similar setup for something like this. We're going to get the overall preliminary plan approved for the way it's laid out here. And as we come in for section per section, maybe possibly one of the single families turns into a duplex or vice versa, but we're gonna handle that section per section.
All right, but the total number of units will or won't, I mean, in essence, it sounds like the total number of units then could change if the single units you've got here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, they could all of a sudden become doubles.
They could in theory become doubles, yes, that would be the idea. But
So
of course,
we're-
we got to get that approved through this board prior to that changing.
So we're looking at traffic, looking at cars and stuff every time we get a section rather than just finish it, do it.
If we increase anything, it's going to be a minimal amount. So in theory, it'd be 15 cars possibly additional as far as the overall number of units with this. And again, we don't plan on it changing very much, but that'd be the concept.
And
Possibly a solution to this is we come up with an overall limit as far as the number of units for the residential portion, and we put this on on this conceptual plan, and then we have to live with that.
yeah, I mean, I guess if you had all doubles and you came back for some singles, then we know that the maximum that we approved
Right,
is going to be less no matter what happens.
right.
Okay, and relative to the road, where the public road ends and we got to turn around with our plows.
Yep.
That is sort of like a cul-de-sac. It's going to be big enough that our trucks can turn around in that point and head back out.
So right now, we're proposing the wide turnaround here, like a typical New York State section or detail to allow the trucks come in, turn back in here and come out. That's pretty typical with a lot of state regulations.
I guess I'm done for now. Thank you.
Mr. Bloss,
I'm all set.
Mr. Marizio, anything?
Is there a reason we're not extending private road C over to the apartment building? Up where that,
Not necessarily. We want to keep kind of the apartments separate from the residential.
right now, they have to go through the parking lot from the other apartment building.
Correct. They'd have to come through here. Yep. And he's talking about this cul-de-sac here and extending it through here.
Just wondering why.
We're keeping it all separate, but we can look at changing that.
I have nothing at this point.
Okay.
Steve?
No, I just wanted to be information.
Yep.
Yeah, I looked at it quickly. I haven't had a chance to review it.
I think a lot of SWIP and the engineering for the project is gonna address a lot of those county comments. There was some comments from the state DOT. I tried to reach out to them today as far as the entrance, and I haven't received comments back from them as far as that goes. But a lot of them have to deal with utilities and stormwater management and that kind of stuff. I think will be vetted out with the SWIP and the engineering that is involved with doing the subdivision.
Yeah, I think you already said that DOT didn't have a problem with the number of vehicles that you had talked about. I mean, they are units, so that was already okay.
Yep, 3 times I've gone to Mr. Deep at State DOT, and he's conceptually approved the entrance to the drive. And again, that's who I reached out to today about the comments that came back. Specifically, they don't like the 2 exit lanes that are coming out on Route 31 that we're showing there, and that we're not allowed to do that. So we have to adjust that comment specifically to change the driveway. So we have to get the driveway entrance approved fully through State DOT. We have conceptual approval, but we have to revise it.
And he's not going to make us do a right in, right out.
No, right now we have a right-in approved, we have a right-out approved, and a left-out approved, not a left-in.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. I'll have to turn around.
Somebody's driveway, probably.
So we did have, and Mr. Estrino's here as well, and we did sit down with both Betsy Parmley and Jeff Deep 2 years ago to get this vetted out as far as what we could get approved here as far as an overall entrance there. And this is what they allowed us to do without any true mitigation onto Route 31. And Mr. Estrino has done extensive tries to get other entrances and exits through over to Legionnaire Drive. He's been trying for years, trying to get something through there. We did get the approved emergency egress through the Legion over there that we show on here, but we haven't been successful getting any other egress through any of those properties.
Yeah, I think Mark brings up a good point in that, not allowing that traffic that's going east to turn in, kind of creating a worse situation because they've got to go find somewhere to turn around. You're actually creating more impact potential. So, I would work on that.
Okay.
With them if you can. Good point, Mark.
You mean on Route 31?
Yeah.
I believe we've looked into it and I don't think I gotta go back to my notes as far as what the state DOT was requiring for that, because the problem is we're so close to that light and trying to put that left turn lane in. I think that was problematic, if I remember correctly.
It can't be a right in, right out. I mean, I watch them, go do real crazy things where we right now have right in, right out on Route 31. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, we did notice that and we're talking to the engineer about that.
Mark, can you put your mic a little closer? Me too. Thank you. Tim,
Yes.
for the density, did you say that what you're showing right now is comparable to what it would be if it was RM?
Yes, we're actually less than what it would be if it was RM. And again, we were approved for 250 lots, but with the initial review by state DOT for the entrance that we have. And we're only showing roughly 115 to 120 units total with this.
All right. We're set.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Leslie Ann Associates. This is for the property, the corner farmstead, as we've been talking about for a while. I did get a call from Mr. Snyder requesting that we again look at the possibility of a cluster in the benefits that may be available with this development. So, Bella, good evening.
Good evening, Hal Romans, surveyor and planner for the applicant. I have some reduced size copies of the maps on the
Who's the last one? Very good.
I have multiple copies. Two versions of the.
Give me a mark. I'll think it's added on. Thank you. Holy mackerel. Thank you.
Okay. The first plan that I have up on the screen here is I call it the conventional or the full build out according to the AG district with the 1 acre lots. What I did was I brought the roadway out to Lakeshore Road here. I did eliminate this cross street here. And the total length of road ends up being about 5,368 feet for this layout. So this is I'll call it the conventional layout, 1 acre lots, no open space. The shaded area that you see is just the wetlands that we're trying to avoid. And we keep our impact at less than 1/10 of an acre. So then if you go to the next one, this is the cluster development, and it shows the roadway coming out to Lakeshore Road. I did keep this roadway in here. And you can see that the green is the open space that's in addition to the gray shaded wetlands. The impact of the wetlands is again less than 1/10 of an acre and the same number of lots on both plans. So 45 lots, 1 acre lots on the conventional plan, 45 lots shown on the cluster plan. The roadway that comes out is, look at the right plan here, is 4,936 feet in length. And the amount of open space went down to 17.1 acres. So we lost about 7/10 of an acre of open space, primarily because that roadway came through here. Previously, that roadway wasn't there. This road looped back up here, and that portion of the roadway was open space. So that's the change in the plans there. We did send to county DOT and state DOT these plans. Our engineer sent it in, and we did get a response from both of them. I gave Steve the emails. State DOT had no comment because we were reducing it from the original 120 lots to 45, and county DOT said they're satisfied at this point.
The state specifically mentioned the intersection of 31.
No,
And-
I actually have a copy
Make
of
sure.
the email.
In your folder too.
Sorry, I can leave it there. And they said, Gordon, thank you for the project update and revised traffic study. Considering the reduction in trips to the intersection of Route 31 at Lakeshore Road from the initially proposed, we have no comments regarding the subdivision. So they did acknowledge that there's less, going to be less trips because we're going from 120 to 45 units.
Yeah, in the larger development, they said that it was not acceptable, which was a concern for the board, so.
Correct. So basically, I believe that we've gotten a good response from both New York State DOT and County DOT. County DOT had no problem before. Obviously, as we progress the project, we'll have to get a actual road cut permit from County DOT.
Do we have the aerial?
So this is the conventional plan that shows the full build out. So in effect, these trees in here and in here would definitely go because they would all become part of lots that people would own and build on. There would be no, we would probably not be able to save much, if any, of the trees along the north or south lines here. And there would be no open space. The gray shaded area, again, is the wetlands that would be untouched, except for the less than 1/10 of an acre that happens when we cross here. And when we cross out here, there's a strip in here that would disappear. The cluster plan that's shown here, the difference is as you can see here, we're planning on keeping a 25-foot strip along the north and along the south. So we'd be keeping 25 feet of those trees untouched. And then all these trees over in here would be untouched. At this point, I do show that these trees could be impacted, but if the town wanted us to try and keep a 25-foot strip there, we could probably work with that. That provides the green space that is here, here, and here. Out here would be 17.1 acres.
And all that green space would be deed restricted to a certain extent.
Yes, I did send something to Steve. I don't know if you got it. But Steve and I looked, we did not find any plan or any clustering plan that was done or approved fully in the town of Cicero before. So what I did was I pulled language from a project in an adjacent town. And it goes through and it says that there will be no building, grading, clearing of anything, except for if there is a need for utilities or drainage. And that's really because you may have an exit swale from some kind of stormwater management area that might have to go, towards one of the wetlands, so you'd have to have that. And also because if there was a future need for a utility to come through that open space, you'd want the ability to do that. Some towns also, so when we do the open space description, what we do is we do a meets and bounds description of the open space according to the plat. And then what we do is we end it with that restrictive language that we then get approved through this board, in Cicero would be through this board. And that final language we have to have nailed down before we do the final plat. Because what we want to do is be able to have that restrictive language ready so that when we file the plat, we can file that simultaneously. Some towns also asked that they put a utility easement over the open space. And that just gives them a little more strength if they have to use it for some kind of utility easement in the future. If for some reason there was adjacent property and you were redoing a sewer or drainage and you needed the ability to impact that a little bit, you'd have that ability. But again, it would only be for utilities, and drainage and structures or maintenance. So what you're trying to do is not make it, there still would be no buildings or as additional units or anything like that. It restricts that. No grading. The individuals would own that open space in fee, but then that restrictive covenant language would be over that open space and it would run with the land. So if I was a neighbor and I saw somebody doing something in the open space, I'd have the ability to take civil action. If the town also took a easement over it, then they'd have the ability to take some kind of action against it too. A lot of the towns do it where it is owned and fee by the lots within the subdivision, because when it gets broken out as a separate lot, there have been cases where the entity that holds it lets it go for the low back taxes that are assessed to it, and then somebody picks it up and tries to do something with it.
Okay, guys, so, the thought is, for Mr. Snyder's request, we should look at this again because it's got that beautiful treat area that could be left natural. There's less infrastructure. It just seems from my perspective, last time we met and now Mr. Snyder's, and then I'll open it to you. It seems like there might be some benefit that we should consider with this cluster development. Dan, why don't you go ahead and share your feelings?
I was thinking more of myself than I was of the town when I made the statement last meeting that we ought to have a full build out. When I got home and started to really think about it, a lot of trees. I happen to be a tree hugger at times. Leaving the trees in would also help the two adjacent neighborhoods by giving them an area that blocks views from yards. My only concern really is, how do we not have this green space end up with what the Horner family had to deal with people building fire pits, swing sets, at the same time, I don't want to all of a sudden give Steve and his department another major thing to watch. And if, your example of a neighbor, hell, if a neighbor watched somebody do that, they might not turn them in. They just say, hell, I'm going to do the same thing. And before you know it, the green space is gone. So I think this is what we need to do, but I'm not yet convinced how we do it and not end up with a similar situation that the current owner had to deal with. I don't know whether it's something that I think the town should have some overseeing rights also on this green space. For me, I think the layout's fine. A couple of the lots that are 12, 13, a lot of trees disappear for those two lots. The other thing I'm concerned about is if there's no retention pond shown on this drawing, and if the retention pond ends up saying, oh, hell, we'll take it out of the back of 12 and 13, then some of my green spaces disappeared, as opposed to, well, it's going to be in lot 16 and it's going to be in the front, so we won't have to impact any of the trees.
But the building lot exclusive of the green area would be the only area that they could disturb, right?
Correct. So.
Well, except in 12 and 13,
Right.
they can't possibly do it without
No,
removing a lot of trees.
Right,
will definitely
12 and
come down there.
13, just so everybody knows, is if you look at up at the board, he's talking about these two lots here. And really what it is the way I have the open space here is it's all this open space is on the west side of the wetlands. So you have this in theory, they could go up to the edge of the wetlands because it's federal wetlands. Usually what we do is we do the final plan and then sell, as the lots get ready to be sold out. Each individual survey that is done shows that open space, the wetland, and then just shows the buildable area that they're allowed to do. If for some reason storm water management is required over here, I picture that we may end up like losing a lot or something like that. I did leave some space over on the east end here outside of the open space here that I think might be sufficient for stormwater there. But again, the problem that I see with trying to put it in the back of those two lots, and why I don't think it would work, is because when you get into longitudinal stormwater management, it becomes inefficient where you have to make it go longer. So you're almost better off just sacrificing something out front. So when I say that 45 lots are shown on both plans, at the end of the day, it may be 44, maybe 43. I don't know. It's not gonna be more than 45 though. 45 is our top end number. That's it. Obviously, the next time we come back, if tonight the board says, yes, the overall layout looks good here, you can progress this project, then we would get into the preliminary engineering for stormwater and see what happens. But I don't picture it being that we'd have anything going longitudinal along the back there, unless there was some kind of interceptor swale. But usually the Army Corps of Engineers and everything, they want whatever drainage is put there to eventually drain into that wetland so that it keeps it a wetland. It doesn't disappear.
Now, do these wetlands end up with a 100-foot buffer?
These do not, because they're federal. So we had the wetlands delineated by our wetland specialist. So what would happen is as we're progressing the preliminary plan, we would also go to the Army Corps of Engineers for a nationwide permit for the impact that we have up here and the impact that we would have right here. So as part of that is they would review our delineation, they would approve it, and then usually when you're doing a nationwide permit under 1/10 of an acre, there is no mitigation, but you still have to do a nationwide permit. If they did require mitigation, we would have to do it. But usually that's our client, my client tries to keep that impact less than a 1/10 of an acre or a half acre, because the last thing we want to do is get into mitigating wetlands on site.
I think we need to hear from the rest of our board since I've
I just wanted to
Taken
do that.
over.
Yeah, no, we will, just so I can clarify, when we're talking about lots 12 through 16, the building lots with all those trees, even if the development doesn't take down all of the trees, those lots are privately owned and unencumbered by any deed restrictions that would be laid out for the green area. So the homeowner is free to take those trees down.
Well, they are, take that back, because this is lot 16 right here, okay? But the lot actually goes all the way to the west edge of the property, so it does have open space on it. So lots 12, 14, 15, and 16, they own this open space back here, so they will have deed restrictions on it. They will also have on their individual surveys, we show the Army Corps wetlands, and we also put a note on there, a standard note that they want to see on there that tells them that they can't do any clearing, grading, or anything within the wetlands. So they have that. They could get in trouble with Army Corps of Engineers if they go into that wetland. So
Mark,
Army Corps of Engineers, and they require us to put, or ask us to put that on the individual survey so that it's on there.
so the green space that we're looking at over here, those lots,
Yeah, this lot here, which is 12, the actual lot goes along this line out here, back here, and here to the road. So that's lot 12. This is lot 13. Lot 14 goes like this. Lot 15 goes like that. Lot 16 goes down and around and goes back like this. So they own that. So this lot here owns this little piece. This lot here owns that little piece. They would own it in fee. But they would have that restrictive language. And then if you put if the town decided in addition to that, they wanted to see a town easement wrapped on top of it, then it'd be subject to that too.
So the Greenland restriction is what we're seeing here, the outline.
The green that you see is the open space that would be restricted, correct?
But it is owned by individuals.
Right, because if you remember, I said that usually towns have gotten to the point where they want it owned by the lots within the development, because when you try to make it one separate lot, what happens is that if an entity has it in its possession and doesn't, the county tax mapping is going to make it a tax parcel, regardless of whether it's just open space, and they're gonna put some value on it. It may not be much, but it's gonna be something. And what has happened in the past is that those entities don't always pay the taxes, and then it gets sold in the county tax auction that they have every so many years, and somebody picks it up for, $2,000 or $3,000 in back taxes, and then they walk up to Steve Procopio and they say, I bought this great lot, 17.1 acres, and I want to put a house on it. And Steve's got to tell him, well, you can't, because part of that subdivision, it was all open space. And then if you get the problem usually occurs when county tax mapping transfers the property, because if you've ever seen the way they do it with a tax deed. Tax deed where they just say, tax parcel 20 is sold to Hal Romans for $3,000. Well, if you get an actual deed transfer from the developer, it's gonna be an actual deed that has a description and lists the restrictions also within the deed. But if you just get a tax thing from the county, you won't see that unless you go back and search the previous deeds, because county does it so quick and in such an abbreviated manner. Doesn't mean that those restrictions disappear, but the person picks it up thinking that they have a 17.1 acre parcel that they can approach the town for a building permit when they can't. And so in the past,
Who is their attorney?
well, most
I-
people that pick it up, they pick it up without an attorney because they're picking up what they think are great deals. And they aren't always great deals. In the past, we've seen this happen with open space in other developments. We've seen it when projects used to have it where like stormwater management areas were put off on a separate parcel. So now what the towns do is they want the lots to actually own it, so it stays the lot. I mean, they can't subdivide it and break it off unless they come through the town for a subdivision process. The town's gonna say, you can't break that off because it's part of your
Yeah.
property.
Well, I think in this scenario, it makes sense.
What happens with the appraisal? I mean, a guy gets that lot 16 and it's got all that space.
Right.
We know that wooded lots should be minimally appraised or taxed. I would hate the hell to see somebody buy that piece of property and they move in, finally get their tax bill, and it's like the whole thing is.
Well, what usually happens is that when you look at appraised parcels, even appraised parcels that don't have restrictions, if I have a $500,000 house that I build on a half-acre lot, and then I build the same house on a 5-acre lot, you don't see a 5 times difference in the taxes. You'll see a slight increase. But most assessors, when they look at it, they realize that if it's a single family lot, you can only have one principal building. You could have, they know the code enough that they know what accessory structures could go up. So they may put some additional value because you have some wood lot back there, but that's part of what the person is trying to get to. I mean, if I was looking at this lot here, one of the advantages that I would like is the fact that I have this large treed area that's going to stay treed forever.
But the assessor should also, if we have a deed restriction, which says you can't go in there and cut wood, you can't do this, you can't do that, then hopefully they will in fact minimally assess that piece of wooded area.
They normally do, and if they don't, usually what the people do is they'll go in on a grievance day and explain to them that, you know, look, my deed shows and my survey shows that, yeah, I have here, you know, right now that's got about 2.2 acres of buildable space. So let's say it's got another 2 acres of open space. You know, they would be able to show them that, and the assessor usually would adjust it at that point if that happens. So there is a mechanism in place, but it's not like I said, it's not like you build a $500,000 house on this lot here, and then you build the same house over there. It's not like this one's gonna be taxed twice as high or 3 times as high. That's not the way they do it. Most assessors are cognizant of that because the last thing they want to do is have to deal with a lot of people on grievance day.
It's based on market value, right?
Correct.
And they get the purchase and sale agreement that kind of indicates that.
Right.
Mr. Rosito?
So, lots, we'll say 12 through 16, the builder or the homeowner could theoretically clear the trees right up to the wetlands if they choose to.
The way I'm showing it now, yes,
And on the other side, they can't.
correct.
And you're saying that a utility could put, or there could be an easement. When you say an easement, give me a scenario dimension wise, and we talking like telephone poles with above ground or underground, and how much could they possibly take away from that? If you had a homeowner or the builder take the trees down up to the wetlands, and then somebody puts a road or whatever, I don't know what, where were the utilities, where are they planned and coming in? And then you're saying that you might have a legal way to put them in on the other side of the wetlands.
The only way I see this probably happening on this project here is if for some reason this undeveloped property back here, if for some reason they approached you when they came in for development, and there was for some reason, let's say that some utility needed access to bring something along this portion here, it would be something that would have to be approved by the town. But usually when we say subject to any easements or utilities that we look at, we expect it to be something like here or here at the 2 roads. When National Grid comes through with their underground, they may go farther out than the road boundary, because typically their trench for the underground gas and electric is 5 feet outside of the road boundary. So I could see a small portion right at the road here and here. There could be along this roadway here if we have to bring, well, sewer would be able to, and water would be able to stay within the road right away. But again, if National Grid, so I see it as from this project being probably National Grid here, here, and maybe along here, for some reason, they've got to do bring their electric and gas along there. And it would be something on the order of 5 or 10 feet outside the road boundary.
We're not being asked to consider a
I don't,
utility easement with this property. It's only if adjacent properties need to get a utility in.
or if to service this project, if National Grid says, well, we're going to bring our gas and electric here, here, and along here, and we're going to go 10 feet on the outside of the road boundary, then they would affect those areas. They would be underground, and then they would, reseed that area. I do not expect anything coming through here, because realistically, if this project gets developed here, I can't picture them trying to ask the town to allow them to try and bring some kind of public utility, along the roadway. Then they'd have to still get permission. They'd still have to get permission to bring the utility from the individual landowner. So just as in the previous project, when they're talking about trying to get ingress and egress out of that project and they've been unsuccessful, if these owners say, we don't want it, it doesn't happen. If the town were to take an easement on top of it and say, if they needed it for stormwater for something like that, then if there was some kind of a stormwater ponding issue or something like that, that they wanted to correct and they felt they had to go through the open space in some area to trench something to daylight or something like that, they might have the ability to do that, but then again, the homeowners still own the property, they still have to talk to the homeowners. So I picture it really just at these road connections.
Regardless, any easement that you need or that the town requests is going to be part of the review process and the approval process. Can't just happen.
Correct. And just so that we're clear, I made these lots buildable area deep enough so that if we run a drainage easement, it's going to be on the inside of the green strips here, okay? We have sufficient depth on the lots to do that. That's why I did that. Our plan is trying to save 25 feet on the west and 25 feet on the east here, which is 25 feet more than the adjacent subdivisions did because they built right to the property line. So we're coming in 25 feet and that tree strip may be bigger than 25 feet in areas. It might be 30 feet or 35. It depends on, what's happened to it. But we would maintain a 25-foot area there.
And that'll be part of the protected green area.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Gabby?
I totally agree with Don, especially on retaining all the green space as much as possible, and all the natural borders. I am curious, the two roads that meet up to the stub roads on at Eden Meadows there,
Yes, here and here.
how would they be blacked off?
As far as
So there's no traffic or,
no, those roads are being connected. We're connecting to Alden Meadows here and here.
I thought we talked about not having access to that.
No, we are connecting it. So what I picture, instead of having a dead end turnaround here as you do now and a
Sure.
dead end turnaround as you do now, these would be connected. So I picture that these people in here will have the benefit of being able to come through the subdivision to get to Lakeshore Road here instead of going back through the subdivision.
So it works both ways. I'm glad you were able to, work out a good entrance on the lakeshore, obviously. So the people from Eldon can go this way too, or vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, this is the natural place where it has to come through here. It's the pinch point between the two wetlands. It's actually where the old field drive is. There's an old field drive culvert here. So, and these connections here, I mean, from a fire safety standpoint, you usually want at least two access points into a project. This would utilize the two existing ones, and then this would be the third.
I think when I was originally thinking about exiting into
Chuck, can you talk into the mic?
the Elder Meadows, that there wasn't a Lakeshore Road access at that point.
Correct. We had
Yeah,
the
that's
two
the difference.
connections, and then we did not have this. We added this.
Which would be the main one, I assume. I like the way the plan is developed here. Thank you.
Mr. Bloss?
Yeah, the question, in and out onto Lakeshore Road, what's the input from the fire company? Is it easy, would it be easy for them to get trucks, anything into that site? I was approached and they said that there was issues with getting fire trucks, the big ones around that corner. Is that true or?
There shouldn't be, because this will be designed to your design standards for subdivision. This is a public road. These are proposed public roads. These will be designed to your standards. So there should not be an issue. They'll have the standard 30-foot pavement radius that all public roads use today.
The other question is, we'll go back and beat that dead horse on the traffic study. I read the report from Onondaga County Planning Board, and it seems that the numbers they used most recently were from January 21. I don't agree with those traffic numbers. So I know it changed. There's less vehicles if we were to go with this program right here. But I was approached, and another individual asked me to see my numbers, and they picked an hour. we're within 5 vehicles of being identical. There's a problem with the traffic study. Now they've already started building 248 units on Lake Shore. Trey J. So, and if you take this and we go 2 cars per vehicle or per home, that's another 90 vehicles. At some point, they're going to get in and out of it.
We, and I can ask our traffic engineer to talk to you more in depth, but he did amend his previous traffic study. And then I had him look at it again when we were changing the plan to show this connection now to Lake Shore Road.
He,
He
if he wants,
modified-
he can see my numbers. I have my worksheet right with me tonight.
Okay, just a minute. So he did revise his traffic review, taking into account that we have this connection out to Lake Shore Road. He did email it to New York State DOT and County DOT. They had the original traffic review that he had done before we showed this, when we were just connecting to the 2 roads here, and they had reviewed it at that point. But then they looked at this again and they sent us an email, which I then sent to Steve Procopio. State DOT had the no comments that I read into the record here earlier. County DOT said that they need nothing at this point. Now, County DOT, if this, whether it's this plan or the previous plan, Town Planning Board here has indicated they want, at least the majority of you, they want this connection to Lake Shore Road. So whether we do a cluster development where we maintain an open green space of 17.1 acres, or we do the full build out, don't do any green space and bring it out there, we would still have to go through County DOT for an actual road cut permit. Lake Shore Road is their road, it's under their jurisdiction. They're the ones that if there's an issue with the traffic study that they review, and when they review it, that they usually have our traffic engineer address that. I can have Gordon talk to you if you want to get into it a little bit more in depth. It's up to you.
Sure, I told him I would bring a copy of, my workup sheet, my count.
You want it?
Steve, can we make a copy of this?
Hal,
Yes.
I'm just curious, is there any plans on putting in things for sidewalks or walking?
No sidewalks would
activity?
be proposed as part of this. And there would be no proposal of any walking trails or anything on the green space. It's intended to be open green space, and the value really of it is going to be the fact that it's left alone and not caught. I mean, to be honest with you, when you get into doing trails into the open space and like that, you usually have to have a HOA, because then what starts happening is people start using it, damage starts to occur.
Okay.
Maintenance becomes a nightmare and the costs go up.
I just know that, with people nowadays, especially having, in particular dogs, that they have to walk. They have to walk on the road itself. Is a typical development.
Typical, yes, it would be just like the developments to the east and the west and the south.
Don, while they're reviewing that, did you have any other questions on or comments?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Mr. Snyder, anything else?
None.
Mr. Marizio?
Put a buffer on that.
Really would just have to be this area here. I do have a buffer along here. So that,
No, there's water pressure issues. in this area.
I'll have to check. I know that the developer did make an initial contact with Aqua. Obviously, they'll be able to loop the system you know, from one subdivision out to here. If there's anything mitigation that we have to do, we would have to do that as part of the project. Same thing with sanitary sewer. If there's any capacity issues or anything, we'd have to work through any mitigation required for this development.
Just real quick, the count data that you gave me, you counted for a 3-hour period from 6 to 9 in the
Yes.
morning.
Yes.
Had 11,035 vehicles total. 6 to 7 a.m. you had 267 cars. 7 to 8 a.m. you had 490 cars. 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. you had 378 cars. My traffic study used seasonally adjusted volumes totaling 590 cars in an hour. So my peak hour is higher than any of the counts that you provided. So our numbers are well on the conservative side.
If you look at your paperwork, I don't have a copy in front of me, but what, I don't agree with you on the peak hours. I actually had a worksheet, another one too, and I broke it down into 15-minute increments.
Yep.
So, but just on this sheet right here, the peak is 7 to 8, 490 vehicles.
Yeah, the peak hour varies every day.
Oh, yeah,
It's not
I
a consistent
realize
number.
that.
It
Yeah.
fluctuates 15 minutes plus or minus. On the day that we did the traffic counts, find my page here. Day that we did the traffic counts, the peak hours were 7:30 to 8:30. So what was peak hour for yours?
Well, and one of the things that's not in here is all of the traffic from the school, because at that point in time, not all the school buses were running or anything.
Again, I'd point out the fact that, you know, you had 490, we have 590 in the study because we adjusted for the fact that schools were out. We adjusted for seasonal effects. So DOT, both county and state, have reviewed the traffic studies and they have not disagreed with the numbers.
What did you have for a gross number? For that, for a 3-hour period from 6 to 9, what was your gross amount of vehicles? Strictly eastbound or westbound, I'm sorry.
Well, we didn't count 3 hours. We count for 2 hours, which is the standard practice. We counted from 7 to 9.
I mean, it's plain from 6 in the morning till 9. There's no way around it. There was 1,135 vehicles westbound on,
I don't
Lakeshore
disagree with
Road.
your numbers at all. You know, we count for a 2-hour period, but we study the peak hour. You know, so ultimately you take the highest hour, and again, our highest hour studied was higher than your highest hour counted. Westbound. Had, it was about 700 cars, and then we factored up 26%. So we added another 200 on top of that, so we were at about 900 cars. 5, 6, about 680, and then added 26%. So that would get you up to about 800, which is very consistent to your numbers. Your 7 to 9 number was 700 or 868. So we're right in that number.
take the, just say we'll use my number, 1,135 vehicles from 6 to 9. That puts a vehicle how many seconds apart on that road? Going west, just going west. What is it, somewhere between 6 and 9 seconds? Got to come off one of them side streets. It don't give you a whole lot of time.
That would give you an average gap of 10 seconds per between vehicles.
And if, what happens is, if you sit there and watch these people for that amount of time, especially during the peak, they'll come up to that stop sign and they got to wait till they can clear Route 31. All of a sudden, you'll have 6 or 8 cars there. And the guy that's first in line, he'll see an opening, he'll go. The next 2 or 3 cars will run the stop sign because they don't want to wait in the traffic.
I don't disagree with you.
I just think accident looking for a place to happen.
I mean, ultimately, we don't argue that there's a traffic issue at Route 31 and Lakeshore Road. DOT is, New York State DOT is well aware of it. It ultimately is an intersection that they have jurisdiction on. And from a mitigation standpoint, it's something that DOT needs to address. We've identified how much traffic this site generates. New York State DOT has looked at it and they have declined to comment any further.
Because I don't think we have the infrastructure to handle like another 248 units or another 45 homes there until we get a handle on the infrastructure. What we're gonna do either with the county or the state.
Don, what you're talking about is moratorium. That's beyond our jurisdiction.
No, I'm open to anything. That's all I got to say. I'm set.
Mr. Procopio today.
Also, thanks.
Mr. Jermaine?
Good point.
Very good point. Mark, any thoughts?
No, nothing at this time. Thank you.
So our objective this evening is to let the developer know how we feel about the cluster as opposed to the standard 1 acre lots. Mr. Snyder?
I prefer the cluster.
Agree with that.
Nothing is perfect, but I think the cluster is a
Mr. Bloss?
Probably a cluster is the best thing.
And I said that at the last meeting, so got that direction.
Okay, and I just wanna solidify one last thing. We're connecting to both connections in Eldon Meadow. And we're connecting out to to Lakeshore here. You would want us to keep both connections here.
Yes.
I just wanted
Run it
to,
out.
I mean, they're there. I just wanted to solidify this. Agreed? With that, I think that's it for tonight. I think the next time we come in would be something that's more of a preliminary plan, would show the same layout, basic layout, and would start to show utilities such as sanitary sewer, water, drainage.
Very good.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, last agenda item is Chester Dudzinski for a sketch plan review. Property at 7172 Island Road. This is a two-lot subdivision. Mr. Dudzinski, welcome.
Do we just say so moved?
Nice to see you. Yes, I've been in here in probably about 11 years, so. I'm just requesting a 1 acre subdivision out of a 41.26 acre parcel. It was in a family trust. My mother passed away. There's no need for the home, so we're going to sell the house with 1 acre and I'm going to purchase the remainder.
And the sheds are the one shed that caused you to have to go to ZBA?
Well, I took care of one, there were two, there was a small shed right on the back line. Unfortunately, the building that's back there now, it's been there about 65 years. It's gonna be probably within 5 feet of the back line, because the town requested they have a 200-foot lot. So there's no way I'm gonna be able to move a 20 by 20 building, so we're gonna have to go to the ZBA.
Yeah, but your fire department could probably take care of that.
5 gallons of gas in the court, or
A match?
and a match, we could have her down in about 45 minutes, but
Open for questions, Mr. Rosito,
No, what's that?
Mr. Abbey?
No, I'm all set. but I'm sorry to hear about your mom.
thank you.
Mr. Snyder?
All set?
Mr. Bloss?
All set.
Mr. Marzio? I'm good. Steve?
No, I'll set, you'll probably want to consider setting a public hearing tonight for this. Yes. Case will be heard next. Non-conforming setback that's going to be created by the new property boundary and the existing road.
Jermaine? Mark?
No, nothing.
Neil, could you propose a motion for the public hearing, please? Wednesday, November 7th. I'd like to make that motion.
So move.
Do we have a second? Mr. Rosito?
Yes.
Mr. Abbey?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Bloss?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Public hearing's been scheduled.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our agenda items. Is there any discussion from the members of the board?
I was wondering, Mark, if we could hone in on the Beverly, the 8010, 8016 behind the car dealer on Route 11. We had a sort of work session that talked about some things. And we were thinking, I kind of put some things together that would make me be happier than I am than the plan that has currently been proposed. And I'll just throw these out and then we can see whether it's something that we want to talk about tonight or not. They proposed 4-story high buildings. I would say that I'd limit that to 3 stories. The town road would be the entrance road and the crossroad that goes north and south. We would not, there'd be private roads in and amongst the apartments and houses. I would limit the total units to 250 instead of the 400 that they're proposing. 2 cars space in the private units is fine. 2 car spaces for the senior units. Maybe we'd negotiate that, but that any garage that is not a part of a rental should not be counted, because you know, if the house you buy comes with an area for 2 cars, that's fine. If the apartment that you rent comes with a space for your car, then I think that's okay. But if they build a bunch of garages, and I happen to know that from the situation I'm in now, a lot of the garages, they're not used, or they're definitely not used during the few months we have that are fine. And they only rent them for the winter months. So I don't know whether this is anything, because I guess the next step for that developer is for us to give them some direction so he can proceed.
Neil, how do we relate to them what we're looking for after the last work session and whatever we chat about this night?
Yeah, I mean, alls I wanted to accomplish, Neil, tonight was to see whether, what the board would want to do and whether what I wrote as my feelings, would that be something the board would say yes, or would we change those? And then that could be communicated in a meeting with him on the agenda.
I don't have, no, they don't.
No,
And I don't have a problem with bringing them back. But how do we reduce to writing what we all agree on?
Mr. Chairman? Yeah, so the town engineer and myself had a meeting with the developer and last week, and they had an opportunity to see the meeting that occurred, the work session meeting that occurred. You know, they're working on addressing some of those concerns and some other issues, and they hope to be on the agenda for the 17th. So they're
Oh,
planning
good.
on being back.
I think, but I guess I just feel that we as a board haven't said what individuals want. And, you know, where I say, you know, 250 unit maximum, you know, we may have in our board saying, no, it should be this or it should be that. And I think that it'd be nice if we had that information and knew what we were all thinking about as a board. When he comes in and we say, item one, here's what we're thinking about, he can respond, you know, here's item two, and make sure that each of the items we talk about, the whole board agrees with that. Does that mean I say that, I don't want to make a motion at this point. I want us to discuss the items, the 5 items I put here to see whether anyone else agrees or we all agree that those are the 5 items that we're concerned about. Okay.
In our work session, I think there was some discussion about not exceeding the RM. And actually,
That was actually 200, I believe.
you're a little bit over that.
Right.
And they did watch that.
They did.
Okay.
As far as I know. Again, we didn't address that.
Mhm.
I think they were really more concerned about addressing the sewer concerns.
I have 5 items, but it could be 4. Yeah, I mean, for example, if we said that 200 units is the most that we would like to have in that area, and he may say, well, then the project's dead. Well, the question is, whether we're all okay with the project dying because we said 200 units, or would we be okay with, quite sure we don't want 400 units. I think all of us will probably shake our heads yes for that one. But we don't know what the other number should be. We know that they can, 200 would be the bottom line of RM if that's what they were doing. So somewhere between 400 and 200 is, and that's why I said, I again, just picked a number, but not a very big number, and said 250. Well, yeah, but if we had the number 250, and that would be where we would start to discuss it. Or we have to say to him, what's your bottom number? What's your minimum units that you have to do? Okay, right. Well, I know Mark made it very clear, I think, that he was looking for the number that would be RM. So developer knows that. I believe, Mark, you made that quite clear because you asked the question, 4 or 5 times, how many would we do in that situation? Can we do that in a meeting next time when he comes in?
So, yeah, assuming they're ready at the next meeting. And then
Yep.
board members think about what Don talked about here, anything else that you want to chat with them, or if you want to mention something this evening?
I agree with what Mr. Schneider said. And I think it would be a good idea to convey that to them before we have a meeting so that they're not blindsided. So they have little ammunition. You don't just invite somebody without any kind of agenda.
Well,
This way,
they did watch the work session. So they got a good idea of what we're looking for. I think it's also important if it's not going to work, that we should convey that to them as soon as possible so that they're not spending money on a project that's not going to work.
Steve, I'm a little concerned. You said you and the town engineer got together with the developer. I'm a little concerned of what you're able to say to him, what Kate's able to say to him versus what the board want. It almost sounds like a sidebar that we maybe
No.
shouldn't have.
No. So they heard a lot of concern about when they were here last and at the work session about, particularly when they were here last, about sewer capacity issues. So they've also been in communication with the county. So the meeting was with the a work representative from WEP, okay, Kate, and it was really to discuss the sewer concern.
That's a big issue.
Yeah.
Did that come out where the sewer is not going to be a problem?
That's, well, he submitted some stuff to Kate to review. Brian did, so. That's really was the topic.
The number of units ever come up?
They know from based on seeing that's, you know, that's concern. Yeah, they didn't indicate.
Any other thoughts or comments on this or anything?
Speak, Donald, speak.
I've discussed that with Mr.
Yeah, I agree. It sounds like we got some direction now. Okay. Steve, you set?
I'll say, yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Mark?
All good, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a motion for adjourn?
Move.
Do we have a second?